Swamiji Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON. I would like to pay my obeisances to His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. So we are on the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is a part of Gyan Yoga. Gyan Yoga has 6 chapters. So starting with the 13th chapter, having 35 verses, its title is Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness. And we discussed last time that these 3 things indicate Jiva, Jagadish and Jagat. And then we will proceed with the further chapters in our coming sessions. So 13th chapter is further divided into 6 sections. And last time we covered first 2 sections of this chapter, in which first shloka was about Arjuna's 6 questions about Prakriti, Purusha, then Gyan and Geya, and Kshetra and Kshetragya. So these were the 6 questions. And in verse number 2 to 7, Krishna answered the Kshetra and Kshetragya and little bit about Gyana. But today, in our session, he will be elaborating on the Gyanam part, for the 3rd question. And from 13 to 19, we will be discussing about Geyam. What is the object of knowledge? And the 20 to 26 will be about the Prakriti and Purusha, the last 2 remaining questions. And from 27 to 35 is about Gyan Chakshu. Gyan Chakshu means the eyes of knowledge, by which we can get out of this material world. So this is about the divisions of this chapter, and this is a quick revision of the verses number 1 to 7. So like we have already discussed, Krishna discussed about Kshetra, Kshetragya, and he told that not only the Jiva, but as super soul, Krishna is also the knower, but he is the supreme knower, because he knows about the all the living entities. We ourselves can know only about our body, which is the Kshetra, which is our karma field. So we can know about our body, but Krishna as super soul is seated in the heart of all living entities. So he knows about each and every living entity, past, present, future, everything he knows. And then he discussed little bit about what this Kshetra is constituted of. We all know that as body is matter, it is made up of 24 elements. And we discussed what are these 24 elements. And as this body is matter, there will be some interactions in this field of activities. And these interactions can be like desire, hatred, happiness, distress. And at the level of subtle body, these interactions can be like our determination or our consciousness and all. So, and the like body composition we discussed. Now, today, after Krishna told us that what is Gyan. Gyan was knowledge about Kshetra and Kshetragya. One who knows about the body as well as the 2 knowers is in knowledge. But now in this section, Krishna discussed that one who is in perfect knowledge should be having these 20 elements of knowledge. What does this mean? That a person who wants to be in full knowledge should try to cultivate these saintly qualities. Or vice versa, if you tell that a person who is already practicing this devotional service will automatically develop these qualities. And these good qualities, they are not about the interaction of the field of activities. They are on the transcendental level. So these good qualities help one to come to a platform of knowing the relationship between soul and super soul. So one by one, we will discuss about these qualities, and this, Prabhupada says, is the real process of knowledge. Why? Because by this process, one will be able to disentangle himself from this material world, and he will be able to go back to Godhead. So this is the real process. So one by one, we'll discuss these qualities like Amanitvam. Amanitvam, all knows, is about humility. And what is humility? It is the most necessary qualification for bhaktas. And humility means that we don't expect any respect or honor from others if we are humble. And humility means that even if we have a reason to be proud, we are not proud of that. That is being humble. And Prabhupada says that humility is the starting of Krishna consciousness. It begins with humility. And the second quality is adamvitam. Adamvitam means when we are prideless. And what is the difference between humility and being prideless? Prideless means that even sometimes we have no reason to be proud. Then also some people are very proud. They will brag that, oh, I am so and so, and I have done so and so. So there is no reason of being proud. Then also in material world, people are very proud. But in Krishna consciousness, it doesn't go like that. They are prideless. They are not anxious to be famous, or they are not anxious to be honored by anybody. And then about ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence. Non-violence, Prabhupada describes it as not only killing, but if we are not putting anybody else in any distress or in any anxiety. So our action should be such that nobody is put into distress by our activities. And Prabhupada mentions in his purport that real ahimsa is if we are propagating Krishna consciousness, if we are giving this knowledge to others, we are preaching, then that is real non-violence. Because if we are not doing that, that is called violence, because we know that we are not trying to help others to get out of this material world. And in that way, we are doing violence towards others. So preaching activity is the greatest non-violence activity according to Prabhupada. And then the next is Shanti. Shanti means tolerance. This is also a good quality by which we can bear any insult done to us. If somebody is not honoring us, we don't feel bad. Why? Because we are on the platform of soul. And we understand that we are not this body. So anything honor, dishonor pertaining to this body will not disturb us. And Arjva means simplicity. Simplicity is a quality in which the person is so simple. The devotee is so simple and so straightforward. He is not diplomatic like materialistic people. He can even disclose a truth to an enemy. So simple is a devotee, and we should try to cultivate this quality in us. Then the sixth one is one of the important qualities out of these six, because it means we approach a spiritual master in a humble mood of service, and we offer our service to Guru. We accept our Guru and we offer service to him, like that we discussed in 4th chapter, 34 verse. Tadvitvi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. So in that verse, we learn that we have to approach a spiritual master in a very humble mood of service. And what happens with that? Because we are associating with a pure devotee, he will bestow his blessings on us and he will make us qualified. Okay. Because even if we are not following, suppose we are not able to follow regulative principles, if we accept and serve a spiritual master, that will give us a strength to follow the regulative principles. So that is the strength of associating with the pure devotee of the Lord. Then Saucham means cleanliness. Cleanliness doesn't only mean external, but internal. And we know that by chanting, we can clean our mind. By chanting Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This helps to clean the dust of a past karma from our mind. So that is very much necessary. And externally also, we try to keep our body clean by taking bath 2-3 times a day and so on. Then Stharyam is steadiness. We are very determined to follow the rules and regulations in spiritual life. We are like very firm. We don't deviate. Undeviated, unmotivated devotional service we will do. And then Atma Vinigra, we have talked about this so many times, that we should be self-control. And Prabhupada says self-control means when we are able to reject the unfavorable things. We are only accepting the things which are favorable for our execution of devotional service. And we are rejecting all unfavorable things. And next comes Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. It also is like part of self-control in which we are renunciating these objects of sense gratification. We are not after sense gratification. And we all know that this tongue is a sense organ, which is the most like worrisome, because if we are not able to control our tongue, we will not be able to control the other senses. And we know how we can control these senses. We have already learned that tongue can be controlled by eating prasadam, by chanting Hare Krishna. Similarly, our eyes can be controlled. We don't want to see anything which is other than spiritual, like we want to have darshan of deities in the temple and all. So that way we can control our eyes, ears by hearing good Krishna Katha and all these things. So we can engage all our senses in spiritual activities rather than materialistic activities. And that is the best method of controlling our self. Ahankara evacha. Ahankara evacha means we are devoid of any false ego. Ego is always there. Ego means our own identity. We cannot leave our ego, but we have to leave our false ego. And what is that false ego? If we are identifying ourselves with the body, then that is false ego. Okay. And janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukha doshna darshana. When we are able to visualize the defects or the miseries associated with janma, mrityu, jara and vyadhi, then only if we perceive, yes, this is troublesome, okay, taking birth, and then we all know what are the effects of old age and disease in our life. So if we are able to perceive that these are miserable, then only we can take a step forward towards Krishna consciousness. Until unless we realize that we are in a miserable condition, we will not try to get out of this material world. So we have to see the dukh and dosha in these 4 things. Asaktir is detachment. And Prabhupada talks that this detachment and freedom from entanglement of children, wife, home, and rest, it doesn't mean irresponsibility. Sometimes we become irresponsible in name of detachment. Prabhupada says, but detachment and like attachment and affection are different. We can have affection for our family members, our relations, etc., our wife, home, and everything. But we should not be unduly attached to them. Unduly attachment means even if they are doing something wrong, they are going in wrong direction, then also we are pampering them and we are not leaving them. For example, example of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. Duryodhana was doing all wrong, but Dhritarashtra was so attached that he was not leaving him. So in that case, Prabhupada says, if our family, we have to be affectionate towards them, we have to take care of them, we cannot be irresponsible. But at the same time, if they are not favorable for our Krishna consciousness, we can firmly tell them that this is my path and I want to follow this. And if they are becoming an obstacle, then Prabhupada says we can also abandon such a relationship and family if required, if it is hampering our devotional activity. But undue attachment should not be there. And nityam cha sam chitvam ishtani to paktishu. Even-mindedness and pleasant and unpleasant towards pleasant and unpleasant events. That is somehow equipoised, to remain equipoised even if some distressful situation is there, or even if some pleasant situation is there, we remain equipoised, we are not agitated, we are not disturbed, like matra sparsha sukha anteya sitoshna sukha dukha. We take them very light-heartedly and we remain same, we follow our devotional activities as the same pace, even if we are in suffering. So that is to be having an even-mindedness among miseries and pleasures. The next comes Mai chanena yogena bhaktir abhyacharini. That is undeviated devotion, constant devotion, nitya. If we are doing this, this is the most important among all these 20 elements. Undeviated, unmotivated, constant devotional service unto Shri Krishna. Then vivikta desha sevitam. Then one of this is that a devotee, he wants to live alone. Like living alone doesn't mean that we are going into forest and practicing devotional life. No. When we are not in the association of materialistic people, when we want to live in the association of devotees, that is called secluded living. And we are a sort of detached from the general mass of people. Devotees, they are not interested in going to sport events or some social functions or any other activity like this, because they know when they will be involved in such activities, it will deviate themselves from the devotional life. And it also means that even if we associate with materialistic people, we don't take their association, we are giving our association to. So that is also one part of secluded living. And then Adhyatma Jnana Nitya Tvam, accepting the importance of self-realization. So, and definitely if we are on this path, we know what is important, that to be a self-realized person, it is very important. And if it is important, what we will do, we will search for the absolute truth. And we all know that this absolute truth has three aspects: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan realization. So in the end, Krishna is saying all these are declared to be knowledge, and besides this, whatever they may be in ignorance. So after describing all these 20 elements, Krishna is saying that this is all knowledge. Anything other than that is ignorance. And we may notice that these are 5 verses taken together, and this is the longest set of verses in Bhagavad Gita which are taken together. This is the longest 5 verses. We may have seen 3 verses, 2 verses, but in this 8 to 12, 5 verses are put together in one slot. So it is describing about the process of knowledge by which we can untangle ourselves from this material world and realize the absolute truth. So the next slide, Prabhupada summarizes that of these 20 factors, 18 are common to both devotees and jnanis. If we see, both are like trying to develop these good qualities and all. But however, the 16th item, which was undeviated devotional service, is only for the devotees, is the specific qualification of devotees. And the last 2 characteristics, that is realization, self-realization, and philosophical search for absolute truth, they were specifically for jnanis. Prabhupada also says that jnanis also, until and unless they come to a point of devotion, they cannot achieve the absolute truth. So that is the point we should always remember. Even though jnanis may have all these good qualities, but there has to be a mixture of devotion to ultimately realize the absolute truth. So this was in detail description of about the real process of knowledge. So with this, the answer to knowledge ends, and we will start with the next answer of Geyam. So till now, any questions we can discuss? Okay, so Geyam is, what is Geyam? What we are looking for, what is our object of knowledge? So this will be discussed from verse number 13 to 19. Next slide.
Mataji, one question.
Yes.
It's in the previous slide here. You said detachment from general mass of people. So does it mean that though we participate in family functions and mingle with others, we should not be emotionally connected? Is that the correct understanding?
Yes, and we are not taking the association, because sometimes it becomes necessary to attend functions, to go and socialize also. You know, generally devotees want to attend the functions in which their devotional activities will increase, their devotion will increase. But sometimes in this material world, we have to attend such functions. So we can be a part of that, but we should be firm in our things, that we will not eat food there because it is not prashadam. We will all talk nicely to other people, but we will not take their association, but give our association to them. So that should be like fixed in our mind, that even though we are going, we will not be affected by that general mass of people. We will not be carried away. We will not be impressed by that. And then next day we are coming and then we are trying to inculcate that things in us. So that should not be there.
So what happens, we have discussed this point time and again, that if we want to protect ourselves from pandemic or any kind of infection, what do we do?
Protect ourselves, vaccinated.
By vaccination. So in Krishna consciousness, what is vaccination? Vaccination is our strong sadhana. even if we have to go out and interact with people, if we have a strong sadhana in form of chanting, nice chanting, if we are hearing and reading every day, then it is kind of a very strong vaccination we always have with us. And with that kind of strong sadhana, if we have to go out, once in a while, having these functions and all, then it will not impact. So what will happen is we go there, we have to associate, right? But we come back, we sleep. Next day again, we get up and do our chanting and book reading, hearing. Again we are getting the purification. So we will not be impacted as much. But it is very important for all of us to understand that we cannot be overly confident about our strength of protecting ourselves. We should always be humble and be dependent on Krishna's mercy, that Krishna, I'm in a situation where I will have to go out, please protect me, I'm totally dependent on you. At the same time, we do our strong sadhana, try to minimize our interaction as much as possible. And specifically where there are things like which can pull our senses, away, we have to try to keep our senses away from those specific sense object, whatever it may be, and try to control as much as possible.
So in this regard, there's a pastime for Prabhupada. Once Prabhupada was praying and he was standing in front of deities. So his disciples asked him, what are you praying, Prabhupada? You are already so self-realized. So Prabhupada said that I'm praying that please protect from Maya. So that is the level, he was also praying to protect from Maya. So we cannot, we have to be afraid of Maya. And he told that I'm worried that my devotees and my disciples are not so much afraid of this Maya. So we have to be really careful in that situation.
Thank you, Mataji.
Next, we will move to Gayam. Gayam is what is the object of knowledge. So till now, Lord has explained the field of activities, that is this body and this material world, and the two knowers of this field, the soul and the super soul. He has also explained us the process of knowing the knower and the field of activities. Full process we have been studying now. Now he wants to explain who is the knowable. So what is our object of knowledge? First, he will explain about soul and then the super soul. So these are the two things which are the real objects of our knowledge, not anything of this material world. We may study, we may have knowledge of so many subjects, physics, chemistry, biology and all, but ultimately that is temporary. But when we come to know the two most knowable, that is soul and super soul, then only we will be able to realize what is the real purpose of this human form of life and get out of this material world. So that we will study in the next coming verses. Next slide starts with verse number 13. So somebody will like to read the translation?
I will read, Mataji.
Yes, Lavanyaji.
I shall now explain the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal Brahman, the spirit, beginningless and subordinate to me, lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world.
Thank you. Thank you, Lavanya. So Krishna starts saying, now I will explain you about the knowable, knowing which you will taste the eternal. Why is saying so? Because once we have the knowledge of soul, super soul, and the relationship between the two, then we will taste the eternal. What does it mean? In Sanskrit, in this verse, it is called Amrit Ashnuvati. Why? We will taste the Amrit. We will taste the nectar. And what is that nectar? That nectar is nectar of devotional life, nectar of devotion. And once we taste that nectar, we will be going back to Godhead. We will be going to eternity, from where there is no return. So that's why it's saying, if we know about these two concepts, we will taste the eternal. And then I start saying Brahman, about the spirit, and that is about the living entity, that is the soul. And we all know about the qualities of soul. That is beginningless. It has no end and no beginning. When it came into existence from the Supreme Being, nobody can trace out that history. When this living entity came into this material world. So we don't know about that. And we also know that this soul is subordinate to the super soul. He's a servant. Soul is not the master. Jivere Swarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. So soul is always known to be subordinate to me. Me means here Krishna or Supreme Personality of Godhead or Super Soul. And we should always remember this. But like we are trying to control this modes of material nature, this material world. We are trying to be Lord. And in that frustration only, we have come to this material world and we are suffering. But once we realize that we are subordinate and servant of Krishna, then we will be tasting the eternal. Okay, that is the meaning of this verse. And he says that once we have the knowledge of spirit, soul, Brahman, super Brahman, all these things we should realize that they are not of this material world. So many things will be happening in this material. What is the cause of this material world? What will the effect of this material? But it lies beyond all these things. It's at a transcendental level. It is not at the material level. That's why it is written, all these things, the knowledge of Brahman or spirit, it lies beyond the cause and effect of this material world. So moving on to the next slide, there are some characteristics of the soul which we have discussed in second chapter. Like for the soul, there is neither birth or death at any time. It has not come into being, does not come into being, and will not come into being. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. We all know about these characteristics of the soul already. So moving on to the next slide. This is from the purport. Or somebody would like to read of this 13th verse.
I'll read, Mataji.
Yes, Nikhil.
The Supreme Lord as the Super Soul is also stated in the Vedic literature. Swatara Upanishad 6.16 to be Pradhana Kshetrajna Patir Guneshaha, the chief knower of the body and the master of the three modes of material nature. In the Smriti it is said, Dasa Bhuto Harer Eva Nanyasvaiva Kadachana. The living entities are eternally in service of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings. Therefore, the description of Brahman mentioned in this verse is in relation to the individual soul. And when the word Brahman is applied to the living entity, it is to be understood that he is Vijnana Brahma as opposed to Ananda Brahma. Anand Brahma is the Supreme Brahman personality of Godhead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipesh. So this is from the purport by Prabhupada. And he says that Supreme Lord as Super Soul has already been described as Pradhan Kshetrajna Pati Guneshu. He's the chief knower of the body, and as well as he's the master of the three modes of material nature. We as soul are not the master. We are actually the servant of the three modes of material nature. And once we come to devotional service, then only we can rise ourselves from these three modes of material nature. So living entities' original nature is to be servant of Sri Krishna. This is also confirmed by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so Prabhupada says that whatever Brahman or spirit has been described in this chapter, it is related to spirit. Because Brahman can be used like for many things. Sometimes Brahman is also used for matter. Sometimes Brahman is used for super soul also. But we have discussed that it is per Brahman and not Brahman. So sometimes in related to context, we can identify Brahman has been used for what. So here in this shloka, Prabhupada is saying Brahman is denoting individual soul and not super soul. And he's saying like using a word Vijnan Brahma for the living entity and Ananda Brahma for the Supreme Brahman, that is super soul personality of Godhead. Because he knows that only Supreme Brahman can be at the stage of that Ananda Brahman. Living entity also can come to that stage, but only after his realization that he is the servant of Lord Shri Krishna. Until and unless he cannot reach to that Satchidananda state of Lord Krishna. So moving on to the 14th verse, in which now Krishna starts describing about super soul. So the coming verses are about mostly super souls. For soul as an object of knowledge was mentioned only in the 13th verse. So now onwards, Krishna is describing the other object of knowledge, that is super soul. So everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, heads and faces, and he has ears everywhere. In this way, the super soul exists pervading everything. So like this, we have discussed before also with an example of sunshine. As sunshine is spread all over the universe, the energy of the Lord is also spread all over the creation, and everything is resting on that energy. And like regarding this, how it is denoting super soul, because we know that super soul pervades each and every atom, each and every living entity like of this material world. It accompanies us. Krishna, in the form of his plenary expansion as super soul, enters each and every atom of this universe. And why it is called that everywhere are his hands and legs, his eyes, head and faces, ears everywhere. This also denotes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not impersonal. This verse indicates that Krishna has his hands, legs, eyes, heads, faces, all these things. But there is a difference. And what is that difference? His hands, legs, eyes, heads, and faces are not like us. They are not material. They are spiritual. And we know that Krishna body is Satchidanand. It is not made up of material elements. It is full of spiritual components. So, but we cannot identify this because at present we are contaminated by this material vision. But Krishna senses, they are not material. They are always transcendental. And we know that there are no differences between Krishna's senses, like he can do the function of eyes with his ears, his function of hands with his eyes, like that. And we have discussed before also that he accepts our offering whenever we offer prasad to him by his glance. So that is the difference. We cannot do that, but Krishna can, because his senses are transcendental. So moving on to the next slide. This is from the purport of this verse. Somebody would like to read it?
I'll read Mataji.
In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that if anyone offers him a flower or a fruit or a little water, he accepts it. If the Lord is a far distance away, how can he accept things? This is the omnipotence of the Lord. Even though he is situated in his own abode, far, far away from earth, he can extend his hand to accept what anyone offers.
Thank you, Lavanya. So it clearly indicates that Krishna accepts our offering. Why? Because he is omnipotent. And this is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. He can do anything as he desires. We cannot conceive of that. We are limited, but Krishna is unlimited. And it is his inconceivable potency by which he can do anything situated in one place. He is situated in the Goloka Vrindavan, but he is taking care and maintaining each and every activity of this material world. How this is possible? By his energies, by his omnipotence. Krishna is able to do each and every thing. So next, further qualities of super soul has been described in this verse. Somebody would like to recite this verse?
I will try Mataji. Sarvendriya gunabhasham sarvendriya vivarjitam asaktam sarva brichaiva nirgunam guna bhoktracha. The super soul is the original source of all senses, yet he is without senses. He is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. Bhagavad Gita 13.15.
Thank you, Rajesh Babu. The super soul is the original source of all our senses. We know Krishna is Rishikesh. He is a master of our senses, and everything is originating from Krishna. Krishna is the Bija Pradakpata. So everything is coming from Krishna, is the original seed. And then here it is mentioned, yet he is without senses. Why is this so? Again, the same point. Krishna has senses, but they are not material like us. He has all transcendental senses, and he can do any activity with any of his senses. And the other is, and we cannot conceive that because our senses are limited, our senses are imperfect, and with imperfect senses we cannot perceive the inconceivable potency of Lord Shri Krishna. And that's why sometimes we say, okay, we cannot see Krishna, we cannot see his senses, and then we may go to impersonalism or Abraham Jyoti, like that things. And then it is mentioned that he is unattached, although he is the maintainer of all living beings. We know that everything is being maintained by Krishna, and yet he is unattached. Why? Because one of the quality of Krishna is vairagya, renunciation. Though he maintains everything, he is not attached to anything. He is transcendental to that. If we maintain a small house also, then we are so attached to it. But Krishna, though maintaining each and every aspect of this material world, everything is maintaining, but he is unattached. That is the quality of super soul. He transcends the modes of nature, and at the same time, he is the master of all the modes of material nature. He is transcendental to the three modes of material nature. These material modes of nature cannot bind Krishna. He is above these material modes of nature. And we know that devotees who practice devotional service, they also go beyond these material modes of nature. But until and unless we try to progress in spiritual life, we are always bound by these three ropes. Only Krishna can claim that he is the master of all these three modes of material nature. He is the controller of all these three modes of material nature. And he has given the responsibility to these three modes, Sattva Gun, Rajas Gun, and Tama Gun, to all the living entities are binded by these, and they are acting according to these modes. And once and only we try to get out of these modes, we can be situated in Shuddha Sattva, and then we can go beyond the three modes of material nature. And until unless that is not possible. So moving on to the next slide. We have discussed this. This is from the purport of 15th verse. The Supreme Lord's senses are not so covered. His senses are transcendental, and therefore he is called Nirguna. Guna means material mode, but his senses are without any material covering. It should be understood that his senses are not exactly like us. Although he is the source of our sensory activities, he has his transcendental senses, which are uncontaminated. And that is the difference between soul and super soul. Our senses are at present in contaminated state. And this process of chanting helps us to get out of that contaminated state, to purify us. And then with purified consciousness, we can approach Krishna. So next slide. This indicates that how Krishna is the source of everything and how his body is spiritual, not material. Ishwaraha Paramaha Krishna Sachidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the Supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. That is Sat, Chit, and Anand, full of eternity, consciousness, and bliss. He is the origin of all. Everything is emanating from Krishna. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. So this is the quality of the Supreme Lord Krishna and his plenary expansion. Moving on to the next slide. These are the verse number 16, 17, and 18. So somebody would like to read the translation?
Yeah, I'll read.
Yes, sir.
The Supreme Truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving and the non-moving. Because he is subtle, he is beyond the power of material senses to see or to know. Although far, far away, he is also near to all. 13.16. Although the Supersoul appears to be divided among all beings, he is never divided. He is situated as one. Although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. Bhagavad Gita 13.17. He is the source of light in all luminous objects. He is beyond the darkness of matter and is unmanifested. He is knowledge, he is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. He is situated in everyone's heart. Bhagavad Gita 13.8.
Thank you, Ashita. Now, some other qualities of the Super Soul. We all know that Supreme Truth exists outside and inside of all living beings, the moving as well as non-moving. That is the all-pervasive aspect of the Supreme Soul. Okay, so how he is present inside all living beings, we know in the form of Paramatma. And how it exists outside, we know that all living entities are in the body of the Mahavishnu. At the same time, he enters as super soul in the heart of every living being. So that's why it is called as that he is existing everything. Nothing is beyond Krishna. He is so subtle that we cannot see him. We cannot know him by the power of our material senses, which are imperfect. And although he is so far, far away, he is near to all. Why? Because he is accompanying us always. He never leaves us alone. He accompanies us when we come to this material world in the form of super soul, though he is situated in the Goloka Vrindavan, in the spiritual realm. But he is so lovable that he doesn't leave us alone and come to accompany us. And the other quality is that sometimes we may assume that if super soul is present in all the living entities and all the atoms, it has divided itself. No, super soul will always remain one. Like we have discussed, like in material conception, if we tear a paper into many pieces, we cannot join it back. Okay, but this is not in the case of super soul. Super soul can expand into innumerable forms in all the living entities, yet remain the whole, undivided or one. And it has been explained by Prabhupada with the help of example of sun. Like sun, we are in Bangalore now. In the afternoon, we may see the sun overhead us. Similarly, if we go 5,000 miles away, then there also we will find the sun is overhead. So sun is one, but we are seeing that sun is present on our overhead in Bangalore, also in other Western countries also, or something like that. Why? Because it has been given as an example, like super soul is always one. It doesn't divide. Okay. And the other example is like if we see the reflection of sun in so many water pots which are kept below, the same sun we can see in all the reflection of the same sun we can see on all the water pots. That doesn't mean that sun has divided itself. Though the reflection may not have the same potency as the original sun, but still it has not been divided. So that is the quality of the super world. It is always situated as one. Like the original candle example is also something given. If we lit so many candles with the original candle will always remain original. Okay. And although he is the maintainer of every living entity, it is to be understood that he devours and develops all. So we know that he is the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of each and everything, which we have discussed in previous chapters. Then he is the source of light in all luminous objects. So in material world, there is so darkness, and that's why we require the light of sun and moon. And the sun and moon are also getting their light from Krishna. He is the source of light in them. He is beyond the darkness of this matter and is unmanifested. And like in material world, we require the help of assistance of sun and moon to see. But in spiritual world, there are no sun and moon. Krishna's effulgence is enough to illuminate the spiritual world. But because this material world is so dark, so it has to be illuminated by sun and moon. Then the final sentence here is, 1 minute, go back to the slide. He is knowledge, he is the object of knowledge, and he is the goal of knowledge. So we can see here three things. He is the knowledge, he is the absolute knowledge, real knowledge. Then he is the object of knowledge. Anything, if we want to know, that is about super soul and soul. And he is the goal of knowledge. So how to understand that? What is the difference between object and goal? We may find it similar, but the difference is, like if Krishna is the object of knowledge, and we come to know that yes, Krishna is the object of knowledge, then what should be our goal? Our goal is to serve and love Krishna. So that is the goal. Object is Krishna, but the goal of human form of life is to serve and love Krishna. For example, if a patient goes to a doctor, so doctor will, the object of his knowledge is to look about the body, what is happening to the body. But that is his not goal. After looking at the body and diagnosing, his goal is to treat the patient. Similarly, if we come to know that the object is Krishna, what should be our goal? Our goal is to develop love and service unto Krishna. And he's always situated in everyone's heart. So with this, we come to an end of discussion of the qualities of super soul. And after that, we move to the next slide. So this is from the 9th chapter. Understand that as mighty wind blowing everywhere, rest always in the sky. All created beings rest in Krishna. Next. O son of Kunti, at the end of millennium and all material manifestation enter into my nature, and at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. So it indicates the creation and annihilation by the end of each millennium, as mentioned in the 9th chapter. And the whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again, and under my will, it is annihilated at the end. So this also indicates the creator, maintainer, and annihilation aspect of Supreme Lord. Because this is the last verse for today. After explaining all these qualities and of the soul, super soul, and knowledge, process of knowledge, somebody would like to recite this verse?
I'll recite Mataji. Iti kshetram tada jnanam jneyam choktam samasataha madbhakta ye tad vignaya madbhavayo papadyate. Thus the field of activities, the body, knowledge, and the knowable have been summarily described by me. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. Bhagavad Gita 13.1.
Thank you, Rajesh Prabhu. So he's saying that after I have described you all about the body, about the knowledge and the knowable, now he's saying that this can be known and thoroughly understood only by his devotees. Only my devotees can understand this thoroughly and thus attain to my nature. And what is Krishna's nature? Satchidananda. So again, we can see that while describing about nature consciousness, also Krishna has brought in devotion. So, and in the verse there, 16th item was there in the process of knowledge. There also constant undeviated devotion was mentioned. So this, we can see that in this chapter also devotion has been mentioned twice till now. Once in that verse, and now it has again been mentioned that only Krishna's devotee can understand this knowledge of body, knowable, and knowledge, and thus go back to Godhead. So the last final slide of this session is from the purport, that these three items have been described till now: the field of activity, that is the body; the process of understanding, that is the real process of knowledge, which was described in way of saintly qualities, 20 items, and then the object of knowledge, that is the soul and the super soul, Geya. So it is especially described here that only by unalloyed devotees of the Lord can understand these items clearly. So for these devotees, Bhagavad Gita is fully useful. It is they who can attain the supreme goal, the nature of the Supreme Lord, Shri Krishna. In other words, only devotees and not others can understand Bhagavad Gita and derive the desired result. So with this, we come to the end of this section. If somebody has some questions, they can. Hare Krishna. So we'll end the session.
Question.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.